The knock came at 1 a.m., desperate and uneven, like the heartbeat of a man who had run out of options. James Parker stood on the doorstep of his boss's house, rain soaking through his thin jacket, his 6-year-old daughter Sophia asleep against his shoulder. He hadn't planned to end up here, at the home of Isabella Montgomery, the formidable CEO who intimidated everyone at the office. But tonight, he had nowhere else to go. 3 hours earlier, his apartment had flooded. The ancient pipes in his building had finally given up, sending water cascading through his ceiling, destroying most of what little he and Sophia owned. The emergency shelter was full. His parents lived across the country. His friends were either out of town or had no space. In desperation, he'd scrolled through his phone contacts and landed on Isabella's number, the woman who had hired him as her executive assistant 8 months ago. Isabella opened the door, her expression shifting from annoyance to shock. She was dressed in an elegant black dress, her makeup slightly smudged, hair falling from what had been a perfect updo. "James? What on earth?" "I'm sorry," he whispered, conscious of Sophia's sleeping form. "Our apartment flooded. Everything's gone. I didn't know where else to go. We just need somewhere for tonight." Isabella's eyes softened as she looked at Sophia, her small face pressed against her father's shoulder, one hand clutching her worn stuffed rabbit. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "You're both soaked." As James entered, he noticed the half-empty wine glass on the coffee table, the kicked-off heels by the couch. "I interrupted something," he said, mortified. "You had a date." Isabella waved her hand dismissively. "Trust me, you saved me from the most excruciating evening of my life. That man spent 3 hours talking about his investment portfolio and asking if I'd considered freezing my eggs." Despite everything, James couldn't help but smile. At work, Isabella was always composed, authoritative, brilliant. This glimpse of her, sarcastic, with her guard down, was new. "Let me show you the guest room," she said, leading them upstairs. The guest bedroom was larger than James's entire apartment, with a king-sized bed and adjoining bathroom. Isabella brought towels, a t-shirt for James, and somehow produced a child-sized t-shirt that would work as a nightgown for Sophia. "It's my niece's," she explained. "She stays over sometimes." James carefully changed Sophia without waking her, tucking her into the massive bed. When he returned to the hallway, Isabella was waiting with a glass of whiskey. "You look like you need this," she said. They sat in her kitchen, the expensive marble countertops gleaming under soft lighting. James had never seen Isabella outside the office before tonight. At work, she was always in tailored suits, her dark hair pulled back severely, her voice commanding respect in every meeting. Now, with her makeup fading and her hair falling around her shoulders, she looked younger, more approachable. "I'm sorry about your apartment," she said. "Do you have insurance?" James nodded, taking a sip of whiskey. "Some. Not enough, probably." "How long have you been raising Sophia alone?" "For years," James replied. "Her mother decided parenthood wasn't for her when Sophia was 2. Isabella's eyes widened slightly. "I didn't know. It's not something I talk about at work." "No, I suppose not." She hesitated. "You're good with her. I've seen the photos on your desk. She looks happy." "I try," James said, feeling the weight of single parenthood pressing on him again. "Tonight, though. I failed her. We're homeless." "Temporarily displaced," Isabella corrected. "There's a difference." They talked for hours, the professional boundaries between boss and employee dissolving with each passing minute. James learned that Isabella had built her company from nothing after leaving an abusive relationship 10 years ago. Isabella discovered that James had put his dreams of becoming an architect on hold when Sophia was born, taking the executive assistant position because it offered stable hours and good health insurance. "Why didn't you ever mention your design background?" Isabella asked, refilling their glasses. We've been working with that mediocre firm on the new office building for months. James shrugged. It's not my place. I'm your assistant. You're more than that, Isabella said, then quickly added, I mean, you're capable of more. The next morning, Sophia woke up confused but quickly warmed to Isabella, especially when she produced pancakes shaped like rabbits. James watched in amazement as his normally reserved boss sat cross-legged on the floor with his daughter, helping her draw pictures of their swimming apartment. Daddy, can we stay here forever? Sophia asked innocently. Isabella's house doesn't have swimming floors. James felt his face flush with embarrassment, but Isabella just laughed. Actually, she said, looking at James, I have a proposition. The carriage house behind this place, it's just sitting empty. It's small, but it has 2 bedrooms. You could stay there while you figure things out. James started to protest, but Isabella cut him off. And I want to see your design portfolio. The firm we're using for the new building is driving me crazy. Maybe you could consult. Over the next few weeks, James and Sophia settled into the carriage house. It was charming and cozy, with a small garden that Sophia claimed as her kingdom. Each morning, they would walk together to Isabella's house, have breakfast, and then Isabella would drive them, James to the office, Sophia to her school. Isabella began inviting James to meetings with the architects, at first just to take notes, but soon she was asking for his input. His suggestions were innovative, cost-effective, and impressed everyone, including Isabella. One evening, after Sophia was asleep, Isabella came to the carriage house with a bottle of wine and a proposal. She wanted to create a design division within her company and wanted James to head it. I can't be your assistant and run a division, James said, stunned. Then don't be my assistant anymore, Isabella replied simply. Be my partner. The word hung between them, loaded with possibility. As months passed, their professional relationship flourished. James's design team transformed the new office building project, saving millions and creating a space that would become the talk of the architectural community. But it was their personal relationship that underwent the most profound change. Isabella became a fixture in their lives. She taught Sophia how to plant flowers in the garden. She attended Sophia's school play, sitting beside James and cheering louder than anyone when Sophia delivered her one line perfectly. She brought soup when James caught the flu, working from his living room so he could rest. And James saw sides of Isabella no one at the office ever witnessed, her unexpected love of cheesy action movies, her inability to cook anything more complicated than pancakes, the way she sang off-key when she thought no one was listening. One night, nearly a year after that desperate 1 a.m. knock, James found himself standing on Isabella's doorstep again. This time, he wasn't seeking shelter, he was bringing dinner as a thank you for everything she'd done. Isabella opened the door, but something was wrong. Her eyes were red, her normally perfect composure shattered. What happened? James asked, immediately concerned. Bad date, she said with a bitter laugh. Apparently, I'm too intimidating and married to my work. He suggested I might be happier if I softened myself a bit. James felt a surge of anger. He's an idiot. Is he? Isabella asked, vulnerability creeping into her voice. Sometimes I wonder if they're right. If I'm just too much. James set the food down and took her hands in his. You're not too much. You're exactly enough. You're brilliant and driven and compassionate. You've created a company that changes lives. You've changed my life. Sophia adores you. And what about you? Isabella asked quietly. What do you think of me? The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken feelings that had been building for months. I think, James said slowly, that I've been falling in love with you since that night you opened your door to us. Isabella's eyes widened, and for a moment, James feared he'd misread everything. Then she stepped forward, closing the distance between them. You know what I realized tonight, sitting across from that boring man who wanted me to be less, she said. I realized I was comparing him to you. Every man, 4 months now, I've been comparing to you. And they all fall short because... She took a deep breath. Because you're the one I want, James. Just as you are. Their first kiss was tentative, then certain, the culmination of a year of growing trust, respect, and love. Building a relationship wasn't simple. They navigated the complexities of workplace dynamics, ensuring their personal relationship didn't compromise their professional one. They moved carefully for Sophia's sake, making sure she understood that Isabella wasn't replacing her mother but becoming something new in their lives. 2 years after that desperate knock at 1 a.m., James proposed in the garden behind the carriage house, with Sophia helping by holding the ring. Isabella said yes through tears, pulling both of them into her arms. Their wedding was small, just family and close friends. Sophia served as flower girl, beaming with pride as she watched her father marry the woman who had become her friend, her mentor, her mother in all the ways that mattered. That night, as they danced under strings of lights in Isabella's, now their, backyard, James thought about how close he'd come to not knocking on her door that rainy night. How easily they might have remained just boss and employee, never discovering what they could be to each other. What are you thinking about? Isabella asked, her head resting against his shoulder as they swayed to the music. I'm thinking about how sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we need to be, he replied. If our apartment hadn't flooded that night, I would have figured it out eventually, Isabella said with confidence. I was already half in love with you at the office. I just didn't know what to do about it. Is that so? James laughed. Absolutely. Why do you think I kept finding reasons to work late? It wasn't the paperwork I was interested in. As the music played and their friends and family celebrated around them, James held his wife close, watching as Sophia danced with her grandfather, her dress twirling around her. From homeless and desperate to this, a family, a home, a love he never expected. 6 months after the wedding, Isabella and James faced their first real challenge as a married couple. The company was expanding internationally, and Isabella was offered the opportunity to open their European headquarters in Paris. It was the chance of a lifetime, but it would mean uprooting their newly formed family. I can turn it down, Isabella said one night as they sat in the garden, watching Sophia chase fireflies in the twilight. The company is doing well here. We don't need to expand. James studied her face, seeing the conflict in her eyes. But you want this. Isabella sighed, reaching for his hand. I want us more. This family we've built, it matters more than any business opportunity. What if we didn't have to choose? James suggested. What if we all went to Paris? Isabella's eyes widened. You'd do that? Leave everything here? What's here that matters more than you and Sophia? James asked. I can design buildings anywhere. Sophia is young enough to adapt, she'd probably be fluent in French within months. But your parents, your friends. James smiled. They have phones. And planes exist. Besides, can you imagine how excited my mother would be to have an excuse to visit Paris twice a year? They spent weeks discussing it, making pros and cons lists, researching schools for Sophia, and talking to other families who had made international moves. They included Sophia in age-appropriate discussions, showing her pictures of the Eiffel Tower and the Seine, telling her stories about the City of Lights. One evening, as they were tucking Sophia into bed, she asked, if we move to Paris, will we still be a family? Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing Sophia's hair. Of course we will. Family isn't about where you live, it's about who you love. Sophia considered this, her small face serious. And we'll still have pancakes on Sundays? James laughed. Absolutely. Though in Paris, they might call them crepes. Crepes? Sophia giggled. That's a silly name. Crepes, Isabella corrected gently. And they're delicious. We can put chocolate in them. That sealed the deal for Sophia. The move was chaotic but exciting. They rented a beautiful apartment in the 7th arrondissement, with a view of the Eiffel Tower from their living room window. Sophia started at an international school where she could learn in both English and French. James set up a home office and began working with European clients, while also continuing to oversee the design division remotely. Their first night in Paris, they picnicked on their apartment floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes, eating cheese and baguettes and drinking sparkling cider from paper cups. To new adventures, Isabella toasted, her eyes bright with excitement and love. To Paris. Sophia added enthusiastically, raising her cup so quickly that cider sloshed over the rim. To family, James said softly, looking at the two people who had transformed his life in ways he never could have imagined that rainy night when he stood desperate on Isabella's doorstep. Later, after Sophia was asleep in her new bedroom, James and Isabella stood on their small balcony, the Eiffel Tower sparkling in the distance. "Are you happy?" Isabella asked, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. James turned to face her. "I never thought I could be this happy. When Sophia's mother left, I thought that was it for me, that my life would just be about being a dad and surviving. I never imagined finding someone who would love both of us, who would create this family with us." Isabella's eyes glistened with tears. "You know, that night you knocked on my door, I'd just come home thinking I was destined to be alone. That I was too much for anyone to handle. Too ambitious, too driven, too independent. And instead, you found out you were exactly what we needed," James said, kissing her softly. "And you were exactly what I needed," she whispered against his lips. 3 years later, their Paris adventure was still going strong. Isabella's European division had become the company's most profitable branch. James had established himself as a sought-after architectural consultant throughout Europe. Sophia was now fluent in French, with the beginnings of Italian and Spanish, and had a group of international friends she adored. And their family had grown. After much discussion and planning, they had welcomed a baby boy, Thomas, who was now 6 months old and the center of everyone's attention, especially Sophia's, who had taken to her role as big sister with pride and devotion. One evening, as they walked along the Seine, Sophia running ahead with her friends from school, Thomas sleeping against James's chest in a carrier, Isabella squeezed her husband's hand. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "The night you knocked on my door?" James nodded. "All the time. How close I came to not calling you. How different our lives would be." "I was thinking about it this morning," Isabella said. "How sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best ones. Your apartment flooding led you to my door. My terrible date made me realize what I really wanted." "Which was?" Isabella smiled up at him. "You. This family. This life we've built together." James leaned down to kiss her, their son nestled between them, their daughter's laughter floating back to them on the evening breeze. From a desperate knock at 1 a.m. to this moment of perfect contentment, their story had unfolded in ways neither could have predicted, but both now couldn't imagine any other way. Sometimes life's worst moments are just the beginning of our greatest stories. Sometimes a desperate knock at 1 a.m. can change everything. And sometimes, the person we're meant to love has been right in front of us all along, just waiting for the right moment to say, "You're the one I want." If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us that hope can be found in the darkest moments, and that love often comes when we least expect it, but need it most.